Madam Speaker, this must be the first time, I think, in parliamentary history that the finance bill is being introduced in such haste. Such haste between the moment it is introduced to the House, only 1 week's notice, to amend 60, no less than 60 pieces of legislation. And, of course, you will no doubt note haste because important documents, including the explanatory notes, existing legal provisions, were only furnished to the House on the 25th of July, a few days ago. You may know, Madam Speaker, that for previous finance bills, including the last one, at least 12 days were given to honourable members to study it, together with the accompanying documents. To make matters worse, Madam Speaker, this finance bill is riddled with errors. Numerous provisions do not even tally with the explanatory notes. I will come to them. It is an inescapable sign of the amateurism that has plagued this entire budgetary exercise. Even more, Madam Speaker, the budget speech, as read by the Honourable Prime Minister on Budget Day, differs materially from the actual content of the finance bill on several key issues. It begs the question, who prepared the finance bill? I will ask, are these the so-called senior advisors that have seen their pay rise from 90,000 to now a staggering 230,000 rupees, plus 25% gratuity, amounting to 287,000 rupees a month? Are these the ones who have prepared it? If they have, they should be let go. The very spirit, Madam Speaker, of reading a budget speech to the nation is to bring hope, to showcase well-thought, coherent policy, to inspire confidence. Instead, this budget and this finance bill have done the opposite. They have generated confusion, contradiction, and uncertainty. Take, for example, clause 29 of the finance bill. We talk of property taxes on foreign investors. The initial policy regarding foreign investment, as it was read in the budget speech and as it was contained in the annexes, was far worse than what was actually made out now in the finance bill. I had myself raised the alarm over the introduction of a 30% capital gains tax on the transfer of residential property to non-citizens, which is found on page 42 of the annex. At paragraph 23b3, you will see. In addition to the doubling of land transfer tax and registration duty for promoters and foreign buyers. And these measures were to come into force immediately upon publication of the Finance Act, without any transition period, and then a reckless move to destabilize the property market overnight. There were countless number of applications, hundreds, on the desk of the EDB waiting for approval. Applications where commitments were already done. And these persons now were made to accept such horrendous increases. Overnight. And I checked my facts, because they were to come out from publication of the Gazette. They were to take effect. This is how it was read in the annex. I stated the relevant paragraph. I invite members to go and read it. So they were to come immediately upon publication of the Finance Act. So we scared away investors. we detailed a hostile policy to foreign investment. We stated we will tax you. We will introduce capital gains at a record 30%. We do not care if your application has sat for 8-9 months on the EDB's decks. You are also going to be made to foot the bill. That is what was stated, and fortunately has been changed. But it is the first time that a budgetary exercise, instead of promoting a reasoned fiscal policy and measures that tie the nation together, has in fact had the contrary effect. And it is a good thing then that the government has backtracked on this. It is a good thing that the capital gains has been scrapped and is no longer part of Clause 29. And it is a good thing that a one-year moratorium has been given to those persons. A one-year moratorium has been given under Clause 29, you will see, takes effect as from the 1st of July 2026, and not as from the publication of the Gazette. You will go and read for yourself. But, Madam Speaker, the damage has been done, and these changes come too late, and the confidence has been shaken already. So what was the point of frightening off foreign investors? And many have been frightened. We cannot really just quantify how many, but many have been frightened from the initial announcement to now the finance bill. And the question is, why? Madam Speaker, even more concerning is that under Clause 44, which concerns Non-Citizens Property Restriction Act, it had been stated at paragraph 76 of the annex that government would ban not just the acquisition, but also the disposal of any property, so therefore would ban the sale of any property already owned by a foreign individual if same was located on state land or pas géométrique. In other words, foreigners who had legally purchased property would now be barred from reselling it, a measure bordering on expropriation. And it seemed that the Ministry of Finance was not even aware of the investment promotion and protection agreements that it has itself signed on behalf of Mauritius with no fewer than 29 countries, binding treaties designed to encourage and protect foreign investment, particularly from any form of deprivation or arbitrary restriction. How could you have ever thought that this would be reasonable or legal? The budget, Madam Speaker, would have been illegal. And this is why I say amateurism. A disregard for legal obligation, which has now greatly shocked that market, a prominent market which Mauritius, I stated before, relies heavily on. Let me turn to Clause 39 of the Finance Bill, Madam Speaker, with regard to the National Pensions Act. You will no doubt have noticed, Madam Speaker, that changes are being brought to the Pensions Act. Changes which, you might be surprised, do not tally between the Finance Bill and the explanatory note. If you look at the explanatory note, that's page 49, you will see that the coming into effect of the BRP to the age of 65 is scheduled for 1st September 2030. In the Finance Bill, this clearly states September 2033. And this in itself has been contrary to what has been announced, either in the budget, in the annexes, the various and numerous statements on the issue, the various replies to PNQs, that it was meant to take effect on 2030, and now it's 2033. What has happened, Madam Speaker, is that now the years have been staggered to 2 years for every year that the retirement is going up. But, Madam Speaker, how can it be that the explanatory notes provided by the Ministry of Finance are different to the Finance Bill? How can it be? Such a mistake on such an important issue has made its way through such an important exercise. So, not only does it contradict the explanatory notes, but the Finance Bill also on that issue contradicts previous government announcement. Talk about oversight. And, Madam Speaker, even though this last-minute amendment to stagger the increase in eligibility aid has been made, it was not the original intention, but they were simply compelled, due to mass public demonstration, to change their tune somewhat. But let us be clear, Madam Speaker, this is still not acceptable. This is still not what was promised by your alliance, by this government, to the people of Mauritius. Be that as it may, Madam Speaker, the public does not care whether this increase has been staggered to after 2023, 2033, or 2030. What the people expected, and rightly so, was for government to show some of the sacrifices themselves, to cut back on overseas travels and the per diems, which have reached record levels, to reduce on the purchases of new cars, and to roll back the astronomical 155% increase in senior advisors' salary. And these excesses has, it seems, become a source d'embarras for the government. There is no way that persons who had worked their whole life would accept to be deprived of 5 years of full pension, 1 million rupees, not even counting the annual increases with inflation. So how would you think that they would have accepted this? How? I could talk, Madam Speaker, of the latest episode we've heard today, the 1.1 million on the Pan-African Parliament that has been wasted. I could talk about how my PQ wasn't answered, but for lack of time, I will move on. Let me come to an important issue, the tourist tax, Clause 58, which is set to come into operation on the 1st October 2025. The first issue I'd like to raise is there is a drafting, an issue of drafting. At section 39B, the word accommodation is missing after tourist at the first paragraph. I think this should be corrected, obviously. But more importantly, section 39D1B requires managers or owners of tourist accommodations to remit the tourist fee electronically in euro to the MRA. And as you know, Madam Speaker, payments are often made in rupees, USD, South African rands to these tourist accommodation. It would force the first issue.
1 more minute.
Is foreign exchange cost. The second, given that it has to be transferred in euros, commercial banks charge an astronomical fee of 30 euros per transfer. So if you're paying, for example, for 10 nights for one person, 30 euros, you would pay the same in the transfer fee because the MRA's bank is at the SBM. So the question is now, how will the MRA make sure that this is workable in practice? Now, Section 39C on the registration of tourist accommodations, it creates another hurdle. As I will no doubt the Minister of Land will agree, many accommodations today offering services of tourist accommodations are still awaiting for their leases to be converted from residential to industrial. And that bars them from being granted a license of tourist accommodation license from the Tourism Authority. And that is through no fault of their own. I'm concluding, no fault of their own. I will suggest, to grasp what the Honourable Junior Minister for Tourism has said himself, has proposed, which is a good idea, that in the interim, we grant those persons a provisional license whilst they wait for their conversion, which takes years, which has taken years under every government anyway, so that they be given a provisional license, a temporary license, so that they may have an insurance which will cover their liability, and so that they may be in accordance with law. It's not my idea, it's the one of the Junior Minister of Tourism. I think government should follow. It is not. I am concluding, but unfortunately. To conclude, Madam Speaker, there must be many more mistakes, inconsistencies, or plain contradictions in the Finance Bill, which I have not seen for myself, given the rush. But as with many things under this government, time will tell.